Hi everyone, it's Martin Shkreli here, and I'm doing a clinical trial analysis. I know a lot of you folks have asked, how do you look at a clinical trial, study a clinical trial, determine whether or not a clinical trial is going to work or fail. And I thought I'd pick AXON's upcoming Intepperdine clinical trial and show you from start to finish how I would come up with a decision. So this video is going to be a little bit unlike some of the others in that it'll be very long. It'll be multi-part. I don't know when I'm going to start, stop. I might stop to go do something personal in nature, pick up a phone, check a website. At the end of it, I'm going to do an abridged version where I kind of just go over the work product that we made in the extended version. So hopefully that'll be somewhat useful for you guys. I know there's a lot of questions about AXON. The name of the company is AXON. Without further ado, let's get started here. So I made an Excel sheet. We call this a model, and sometimes it's not so much about the financial model as much as it is about just a place to keep details about the drug, details about the medicine and the trial, and making sure that we've we get everything. So there's nothing. There's nothing in this file quite yet. The drug's called Intepperdine. So you're going to see me fill out this file, and I'll upload the file when I'm done. Indication is, of course, Alzheimer's disease. The clinical trial is a phase 3 clinical trial, also known as kind of the pivotal last big clinical trial. The economics are that they owe GSK a little bit of money and or royalties. There's some intellectual property which we'll go through, and I think maybe we'll put in mechanism of action, which is a 5-HT6 antagonist. We'll eventually look at nilotanserin because we have to understand what the value of both of these drugs is if we're going to trade the stock. So I'm going to go into Bloomberg, but there's a lot of ways to do this, and when possible, I'm going to try to use as much open source kind of tools as possible, so sec.gov and so forth. So maybe let's go to AXON stock price, which is probably a good start, and the stock's at $20. Okay, and the next place to go is maybe the SEC's website. We'll get some basic understanding of the company's financials. Specifically the number of shares outstanding. So there's 107 million shares outstanding or so, 107.525925, which is about the same as it was in Q1. And so if there's 100 million shares of something and each share is $20, that's about $2 billion. That should make sense to anyone who's ever bought multiple things of something that has a price per unit. The price per unit's 20 or so, and there's about 100 or so million of them. So it's about $2.2 billion for the whole company. And let's see, they have some cash, of course, which comes with the company. And so they have $297 million. That's a little bit more than before. Maybe they did an offering or something, I'm not sure. We'll look at that in a second. They owe their, I guess, parent or partner or something $4.4 million, and they have $51.7 million in debt. All right, so that's the current financials. So the so-called enterprise value is about the same as the market cap. It's about $2 billion. So what we're dealing with is a $2 billion company. And for those of you who don't know, who are living under a rock, this drug, Intepperdine, is a potential drug for Alzheimer's disease, and the results from this phase 3 test, or clinical trial is maybe the right way to say it, will be released in the next few weeks. And depending on whether they're good or bad, the stock will either go up, it'll either go up, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe it could go to 60 or 80 or 100, or it'll go down. It could go down to close to nothing. It could go down to $5 a share easily. So from 20 to 5 or 20 to 100, we'll see what happens. I did just list something for sale, so I'm kind of curious how it's doing. It looks like there are some people interested in what I'm selling here. Let me just take 2 seconds to to do this. Sorry to interrupt. All right. Anyway. So let's make a new sheet for Interberdine. I think I got that right. Interberdine. And the way I like to do this, I've evolved this format over many, many years. I think it's a pretty good format as I do this sort of tab format, almost like, if you guys know databases, it's a sort of like a NoSQL database or a JSON database. So it's just a document, and it allows me to just sort of type freely, but it's still a little bit structured. So you'll see how I do it in a second. So this is stuff that I just know from memory, but I'll sort of show you step by step how to learn this stuff. Obviously, you hear a little bit about the company and a little bit about the drugs, but I want to make sure that you guys see how to do this from scratch. And you can sort of take that from a meta perspective. Well, how do I know to look for companies like AXON who have clinical trials upcoming? And I'll actually cover that as well. But if we start from scratch, one of the best ways to go is the company's website. It's probably axovant.com. Let's try that. There it is, axovant.com. So they have all the perfunctory nonsense on the website, but the first place that I like to go to is press releases. And so on press releases, I think it makes sense to read as many of the press releases as you can. This is a relatively new company, so you can actually read all of them pretty easily, and we'll probably do that. I don't know if we'll do it all in one sitting tonight, but we will read all the press releases in this video series at least. I like to make a point of having read every single one of them, especially if I'm going ham, as they like to say, on a company. So I'll even print them out and put them in a folder and check mark that I checked all of them and stuff like this. So it depends on really how crazy you want to go. But one of the reasons you do it this way is so that as you read them, you're putting the information into your model. So we can actually start from scratch, maybe just because I want to show you guys how to do this from scratch. We can really start from scratch all over again. And this can be sort of like a template of sorts. And again, you'll see sort of my method as I go on. But if I assuming from scratch that I know that I want to look at AXON, how would I go about looking at it? Well, the first press release, and what is a press release? Well, a press release is, in essence, companies have sort of grown to have this convention where companies decide that they will disseminate information simultaneously to the public, and they do this via a so-called press release. And the press release is nothing more than sort of a document that you type up. I've written many, many of them in my life. And you broadcast them through one of really two sources. One is called Business Wire, and the other one's called PR Newswire. And this company uses PR Newswire. But one of the two you pick and you send out. So in any event, you read all of those press releases, and I think you get a very good sense for what the company at least wants the public to know. Then the SEC filings are sort of similar. They're a little bit more regulatory in nature, so you sort of want both of those, I'd say. So let's start here. It says AXON to move stock exchange listing to NASDAQ. This isn't really too relevant. Ticker symbol to remain AXON. So they're just deciding that they want to go from the New York Stock Exchange to NASDAQ. And NASDAQ is a great fit for AXON, as it is home for leading biotech companies, and we're honored to now be among them. From a listing perspective, we believe this move will enhance our visibility while offering efficient access to a portfolio of opportunities for our shareholders. I'm not really sure what that means. While offering efficient access to a portfolio, okay. We were proud to have AXON join our family of companies. We're excited to have AXON to be AXON's strategic partner and help support them. Okay, great. So anyway, that is what it is. But there's other information here that's kind of important. So you have the CEO, who's David Hung, and Dr. Hung has been pretty important entrepreneur in biotech. I think he's pretty smart, actually. And then you've got two people here, Jonathan Neely. Jonathan Neely, who we can write down, is the investor relations. And it's kind of nice to have the email too, so I'm going to write that down. Jonathan.Neely at axovant.com. And I think we can even send him an email during this process. So Nina Berry, this is media. So Nina.Berry at axovant.com. All right, great. So we've got all of that. So let's read the second one. AXON announces first quarter financial results and corporate updates. Well, any quarterly report is going to be really important. So the last press release wasn't really important, but I should also mention that I noticed that the Basel, Switzerland headquarters is a little strange, because I'm pretty sure David Hung doesn't live there, but you know, we'll look into that. All right, so AXON today announced financial results for its 3 months ended June 30th. Strong balance sheet with $297.9 million in cash. So again, we got that from the SEC filing, and I would encourage you not to take the financials from the press releases. So I think you should take them from the SEC filing. So we'll ignore anything like that. Completed enrollment, and let's say again, you came from Mars and you don't know anything about this company at all. So completed enrollment in Headway DLB clinical study of etepridine. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we know that there's a drug called etepridine, so let's put that in. Etepridine, and let's link it to a sheet called etepridine. So I like to put all my basic stuff on the front page, and then I put the detailed stuff on each drug's specific page, and I even make subpages from that. So there's a lot to do there. Completed enrollment in Headway DLB. So sometimes you name a clinical trial, so we'll call that Headway DLB. That's the name of the clinical trial, and it's for dementia with Lewy bodies, or so-called Lewy body dementia. So we'll put that down in indication. You could write disease if you want. I like the formal word indication. So Lewy, I think it's maybe just L-E-W-Y. Yeah, Lewy body dementia. Dementia. There we go. And the drug, of course, is Intepirdine. All right, so we know at least that they have a clinical trial for Intepirdine and Lewy body dementia. Presented new preclinical data which suggests that Intepirdine may have neuroprotective properties against vascular injury and neuronal metabolic dysfunction. Okay. Again, my expertise is that this is irrelevant, but I don't mind putting preclinical data. So let's see. Neuroprotective is a very silly sort of phrase, neuroprotective property against, but if it's against vascular injury, that makes sense, since vascular injury does occur in, say, stroke, and there's a sort of a part of the damage of stroke is intrinsic and comes from the body's response to the stroke, so keep that in mind. And, okay, so against vascular injury and neuronal metabolic dysfunction. Neuronal metabolic dysfunction. Again, this is sort of a buzzword concept, but, you know, I'll write it down, and I'm going to note where I got this from. So I'm going to say Q2 17 press release, just in case I want to look at that further. Okay. Announced U.S. FDA granted fast-track designation to nilotanserin. Okay, so that sounds like a second drug, so let's write that down. Nilotanserin. And here an indication we can write Lewy body dementia. Okay, that works. Nilotanserin, fast-track designation to nilotanserin for the treatment of visual hallucinations disorder in Lewy body dementia. So I guess they say DLB, which is dementia with Lewy bodies, but I think most people say Lewy body dementia still, although they would, I think, know better than I would. I like Lewy body dementia, so I'm going to write it that way, but let's keep that in mind. All right, so this is nilotanserin, right? Nilotanserin, brand name, generic name, nilotanserin, right? Nilotanserin. All right, great. So again, we'll make the links. Okay, Anticipate last patient visit in August in the Mindset Phase 3 clinical study of interberdine. So I think that's the study we're going to be focusing on, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Mindset. Phase 3 Mindset. We don't know that that's the Alzheimer's study quite yet from this press release, but that's fine. This is a very exciting time for AXON as we expect top-line results from 5 late-stage clinical studies over the next several months. If successful, we believe that 3 of these studies, Mindset, Headway, and the REM Behavior Disorder Study. So he did mention that Headway is a phase 3, so we'll write that in. So you can see the method is just taking documents, taking information from documents, putting them in, and then we'll synthesize them in a second. The REM Behavior Disorder Study, whatever that is, could potentially serve as pivotal studies and may, if approved, lead to new treatment options for people impacted by Alzheimer's disease and Lewy body dementia. Okay, so he says Lewy body dementia, even though they say the dementia with Lewy bodies over there. For the first fiscal quarter ended June 30, 2017, R&D expenses were $43.7 million, so maybe it makes sense now to make a model. We won't belabor this because most of the values in these clinical assets, but I think it is important to make some kind of model. Yeah, with respect to the album, I'm pretty upset that they're making a new album, and that's the reason that I'm frustrated. Anyway, let's see. Again, I suggest that you don't take financials from the press release. I would take them from the SEC filings, so I think that's fine. We can wait for that. Development update. Interberdine, nilotanserin, RVT-103, and RVT-104 are being developed as potential treatments for patients with Alzheimer's disease and Lewy body dementia. All right, so let's add in. And I should mention that I have no preconceived notions as to whether or not this clinical trial will fail or succeed. So we're really going to both learn from scratch here. The company expects top-line results from the following late-stage clinical studies. Mindset, a phase 3 study of interberdine in patients with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so let's do that. Interberdine. Okay. So Mindset, phase 3 Mindset in mild to moderate Alzheimer's. All right, we're going to look into that really carefully. All the patients are on a stable background of donepezil, which is Aricept. So patients, so we say sort of inclusion criteria, stable dose of donepezil. Expected timing, last patient visit in August, followed by results in late September. So last patient visit, August 2017, results late September 2017. So this is coming up pretty soon. So at this point, again, I want to analyze the whole press release, and it's almost over, so maybe let's just go through that. Headway, they're calling a phase 2B study. Well, they called it a phase 3 study a second ago. I'm not going to belabor that. It's not a big deal, but it's sort of interesting. Expected timing, 4th quarter of 17. Okay, so results, Q4 17. And I actually kind of like on the front page to do it like this, Q4 17. Headway, phase 2B, maybe Headway, put it that way. Headway results. And then let's say September 2017. I am recording this mindset results. Let's say phase 3 mindset results for interberdine. And that's the big one we're waiting for, right? If that study works, that'd be great for the company. If it doesn't work, it would not be so great for the company. So it looks like they have a gait and balance study in various different illnesses, which is kind of interesting. So they're doing, gait means walking, basically the manner of your walking, which is often impaired. let's see, ADDLB, PPD, Parkinson's disease dementia, PDD. All right, phase 2 study evaluating needletenserin for patients with LBD who experience frequent visual hallucinations. Okay, this is different from Headway. I'm going to move that a little bit lower there. We're going to study mindset really carefully. In fact, we should make a separate page just for mindset. So again, all of this you can get from just translating, in essence, from this press release. So let's add that second phase 2 DLB. They're saying results in Q4 17. So basically, the reason this is different is the DLB visual hallucination study. Phase 2 study evaluating needletenserin in the treatment of REM behavior disorder in subjects. So this is DLB as well. And again, they called it phase 3, but it sounds like a phase 2. It's a little frustrating. But again, mindset's the real big study that we're going to be focused on. Right? Okay. Additionally, events relating to the company's investigational products were announced in June as follows. Recruitment for the phase 2B Headway DLB study completed in June, with 269 subjects randomized. So let's put that in there. N equals 269. Fast track we know about. Fast track destination is really kind of unimportant. Results of proof of concept study of RVT 103 was disclosed. The company's registration of RVT 103 initiated a proof of concept study for RVT 104. Great. All right, the company presented new data at the AAIC in London. So I like to write that kind of thing down. AAIC. Was it removed? That's frustrating. What the heck? I'm trying to sell my product. Maybe I'll do Amazon.com. All right, let's keep going. Integrity may have neuroprotective properties against vascular injury and neuronal metabolic dysfunction. We looked at that. In the animal study used in this study, interpreting demonstrated neuroprotective effects under hypoxic and hypoglycemic conditions. And an array of, in an in vitro assay of mixed cortical neuron cultures at clinically relevant concentrations, specifically when pre-treated with interpreting decrease in LDH. A surrogate marker of cell death was observed in MCM cultures exposed to oxygen and glucose deprivation. All right. Okay, great. So that's not too important. Here's the financials, which again we can get from the SEC filing. I don't think in vitro data is too important usually, but we'll kind of talk about that in more detail. So that one press release gave us a lot to go on. So one of the things that I would do before I move on to the next press release is I'd go to the clinicaltrials.gov entry for the clinical trial. All clinical trials have to be sort of registered on clinicaltrials.gov. Oops, I misspelled interpreting. There we go. And so you got to find the entry, and here's the entry for the Mindset clinical trial. It used to be called RVT 101, and I believe it had a name before that as well. So we'll go through that in a second, but we see RVT 101, so I'm just going to pretend like I don't know anything about this company whatsoever. And I would, again, want to read from top to bottom and try to get this thing done. So they first received this record on October 22nd, 2015, which is pretty important. So let's go to our Mindset page. Clinical trials, first record. (10/22/15). Okay. And we'll look at the history of changes, which will be somewhat important. It's a phase 3 clinical trial of RVT and placebo. So the study seeks to confirm a demonstrated treatment effect of RVT-101 as an adjunctive therapy, which means an add-on therapy, to donepezil for the treatment of subjects with Alzheimer's disease. Interventional allocation randomized, intervention model parallel assignment. Masking is quadruple masking. So if we had double blind, it's quadruple blind. Primary purpose is treatment, randomized study of RVT-101 versus placebo. Maybe we'll say interventions, RVT-101, placebo. I'm sorry, interberdine. You think I should relist the album? That would be funny. (1,315 patients. Wow. That is a big study. So the most important thing in any clinical trial is the primary outcome, or primary endpoint. Because I have no feedback, you think? All right, so there are two primary endpoints, which is a little uncommon. So here we have change in ADAS-Cog11, which is an Alzheimer's clinical trial endpoint at 24 weeks. And let's see, change in ADCS-ADL at 24 weeks. And so in a primary endpoint, when you have two primary endpoints, there's several ways to treat the statistics of that, and usually one primary endpoint is what you do. So this will be a little bit unusual. This will be a little bit unusual as far as that goes. Let's see, eBay. Your eBay account is temporarily restricted. To verify your account, click here. Also very hungry. All right, I want to do this first, so maybe I'll relist it tomorrow. All right, so the secondary endpoints really don't matter too much. We'll write them down really quickly here, but they really don't matter. Global impression of change, neuropsychiatry inventory, EQ, 5D, visual analog scale, whatever that is, and of course any safety issues. It said the study started in October 2015, but they're saying the estimated completion date is October 2017, but they've told us that it'll be sooner, a little sooner than that. So, and we know it's a 35 milligram QD oral dose. I'm going to say QDPO. And placebo is matched. There's an SPA with the FDA, which is somewhat helpful, but not too helpful. Basically, the SPA is an agreement with the FDA that your protocol would be approved if the primary endpoint the study meets its primary endpoint. So eligibility is pretty important. So let's say enrollment or inclusion criteria. Ages 50 to 85. Ongoing AD treated with donepezil. Very interesting here. The MMSE of 12 to 24 inclusive. Very interesting. At screening. And 12 or 10 to 26 at baseline, so they allow a little variability. I don't know what a Hachinsky ischemia score is. Ischemia, of course, is like it's a blockage. So if there's a stroke, I guess post-stroke. There's really not much inclusion criteria. Not too much in the inclusion-exclusion. Usually, it's a much bigger list. Go figure. All right, so study sites. Looks like they have 197 study sites, which is pretty interesting. We'll look at those in a second. And let's write down the NCT code for faster access. Okay. And let's actually look. So now the study director, we should write that down. We got a list now of 4 of the company's employees. Let's look at the 197 study locations. So we've got, let's add up how many are in the US? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it's interesting that they're numbered, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12. A lot in Florida. Guess there's some Alzheimer's there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 and 12 is 24. 3 more in Georgia, 2 more in Louisiana, makes 5. That's 29. Another 2, 31. Another 2 here, makes 33. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in New York. And you'll see why this is actually very important in a second. 2 more in North Carolina, and 4 more in Ohio makes 6 more. So 45 and 6 is 51. 1 from Oregon and 4 from Pennsylvania makes 5. 5 and 51 is 56. 2 in Texas, 1 in Utah, 1 in Virginia, and 1 in Washington are 5. So we've got 61 in the US. Let's look. This is strange, huh? I have a lot in Argentina. $17 in Argentina. Strange. I would imagine there would be no clinical trials in clinical trial sites in a normal study in Argentina. 6 in Australia, which sounds about right. 4 in Bulgaria. Somewhat diversified. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in Canada. 4 in Chile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Croatia. I'm guessing this is the Czech Republic. 5 in Czech Republic. 4 in France. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in Germany. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in Italy. 3 in Korea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in Poland. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in Serbia. 2 in Singapore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in Slovakia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in Spain. 3 in Taiwan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 in the UK. Let's see if this adds up, by the way. It does. All right, so the 2 biggest countries are, of course, the US, Argentina, the UK, Canada, and Poland, and Germany. It's about right. There's nothing untoward. What you're often seeing in some clinical trials is there's a weird geographical distribution that results in poor quality data, and it looks as if this company did a very good job of ensuring that that won't happen here. These are all kind of first world countries, especially the largest ones. I'd say that Argentina is a little out of place, and I mentioned that earlier, but other than that, it's a relatively good distribution. And I worry sometimes when I see someone doing all their clinical trials in Russia or something like that. So it looks pretty good to me. All right. So that's really it here. Everything's set up there. A drug has to definitely gets approved in some indications and not others, for sure. And so we know the primary endpoint is this co-primary endpoint. At least we think it's a co-primary endpoint, but we don't know for sure. So the question on a primary endpoint is, do you analyze them sequentially or simultaneously? And so if you analyze them sequentially, basically you're saying the first primary endpoint has to be met, and then the second primary endpoint has to be met afterwards for the trial to be successful. If you analyze them simultaneously, you could have a mixed result. You could have one meet its primary endpoint and then one not meet the primary endpoint. And that's why the word primary endpoint is a little strange. They're kind of co-primary endpoints, and there's sort of 2 ways more or less of doing it. So we don't know what the statistical analysis plan is, which is called the Statistical Analysis Plan, SAP. And unless we had the exact protocol for the clinical trial, we wouldn't be able to determine what the SAP is. We can listen to the company, but companies can often be somewhat misleading with respect to their SAPs. Okay, so before we get to the next clinical trial, or press release I should say, one of the things that I would look at is I look for information on interbreeding. So one of the best places to go might be PubMed. PubMed is sort of the clinical trial, or is the medical information scholarly published journals repository. So I'll look for any published information on interbreeding. Now, if you don't have a sort of access to these articles through a database, you can actually use, and I would never advocate you use it, but it's something called Sci-Hub. So you go to sci-hub.cc, and you can actually pull some of this stuff. And again, I don't think you should use it, but it's something that you could certainly think about. So let's read some of this stuff. So both of these papers seem to be review papers that address more than just interbreeding. So here, enhancement of the acetylcholine response using 5-HT6 receptor antagonists, serotonergic neurotransmitter. I've said that word a zillion times. It's been a long day. Is impaired, neurotransmitter system is impaired as AD develops and progresses. Modulation of this pathway is therefore considered to be of therapeutic value. Serotonin 5-HT activates specific 5-HT receptors consisting of 7 distinct classes, 5-HT1 and 5-HT7, based on their structural and functional characteristics. The 5-HT6 receptor is expressed primarily in brain areas involved in learning and memory processes, the cortex and hippocampus. 5-HT6 receptor antagonists are thought to enhance cholinergic neurotransmission. Iloperidine, interesting, is an orally available 5-HT6 antagonist and showed promising efficacy and safety data in phase 2 trials. Although iloperidine is safe and well tolerated, however, iloperidine did not meet its primary efficacy endpoint versus placebo in 2 recent phase 3 trials. Etepridine is another 5-HT6 antagonist, so now we know what the mechanism is. So when we go to etepridine, we can write mechanism 5-HT6 antagonist. Great. And if you don't know what an agonist or an antagonist is, I suggest you look that up and learn a little bit about pharmacology. You would need to know that to analyze something like this. All right. That is currently in phase 3 clinical trials in patients with mild to moderate AD already on donepezil. So there's 2 clinical trials entries here. We have Mindset, which ends in 934, but we don't have this one. So let's take a quick gander. I think it's the open label extension study. So I don't want to... Yeah, it's a 12-month open label study. So basically after you go into the Mindset, you can do the extension study. Analysis of data from phase 2, evaluation of treatment with etepridine indicates that addition of this treatment to donepezil may improve the cognition and function of patients with mild to moderate AD. So again, I would save this. Let's save this file in here. Let's make a folder called AXON, and you can save all of your data together. And again, this paper is free, so there's no issue in saving it. I just like to save these by their title: drug candidates in clinical trials for Alzheimer's disease, Hung et al. No relation to the company's CEO. And maybe put the date, 2017, I'm guessing. Yes. Okay. So there's some histamine antagonists as well in clinical trials. And there's nicotinic drugs, amyloid, of course, glutamate, and so forth. And if I were you, I'd read this entire paper. Now, what's interesting is that they have some references here. And I think we want to get those references. So, oops. Let's see. Let's look at some of these references. Doesn't look like they have a whole lot here. We'll print this out and go back to it, but it has the AXON website as one of the press releases, as one of the references, which I don't think is going to help us too much. So that's fine. Let's look at the second one. Emerging chemical therapies targeting 5-HT in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Where's the PDF? Get access. All right. I'm unable to get access through this account, so I'm gonna pass on reading further, but that's fine. So there's PubMed, but there's also just a quick Google search. Interberdine. Let's take a look. And I quickly see here that there are some synonyms which strike me as surprising. GSK 742457. What's that? I know GSK is GlaxoSmithKline, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. So I wonder, did this drug come from them? GSK 742457. Let me Google that. Huh, look at that. AXON banks on GSK's scrapped project. So for anyone who doesn't know, I actually was bidding on this as well. And in fact, I bid $5 million as well as AXON. So, you know, just so you know, I know quite a lot about this. But I'm pretending that I'm seeing this for the first time. And I had nothing to do with this. So you can see here from this article that it looks like Roivant scrapped the project, bought the drug from GSK. So that's kind of interesting. So that's very important. So one of the things you want to always ask about a drug is, where did it come from? So now that I can just Google GSK 742457, and one of the first things that comes up looks like a published clinical trials. Okay, so let me save this. 2 randomized controlled trials of SB 742457. Mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease, Maher Edwards et al. 2015. All right. 2 previous studies of 457, a 5-HT6 antagonist, suggest the efficacy of improvements in cognition and global outcome in Alzheimer's disease. Look at that. So we had study 1 and study 2, and they were both about 600 patients, which is interesting because Mindset is 1,300 patients. So let's make room for this. Phase 3, study 1 in Alzheimer's, N equals 576. And phase 3, study 2 in Alzheimer's, N is 684. Okay. And study 576 investigated 457 and donepezil as monotherapy, and this was in addition. So both studies failed to achieve formal statistical significance for the primary objectives. Okay, well, that's not good. .457 monotherapy was not statistically significantly different from placebo on any endpoint. 35 mg showed statistically significant differences relative to placebo for ADAS-Cog at weeks 12, 24, and 48. Stat sig on ADAS-Cog at weeks 12, 24, and 48, but not 36. Okay, that's fine. And let's see. For ADCS, ADL, for weeks 12 to 36, but not week 48. All right. So sort of mixed results, huh? We'll get the raw data in a second. There's a lot of data here that's going to be really important to print out and read. There's a donepezil active control here and 15 mg and 35 mg, so let's write that down. 15 mg iteperdine, inteperdine, or iteperdine, inteperdine, versus 35 mg inteperdine versus donepezil versus placebo. So this is a pretty complicated study. There's an NCT number for this as well, so let's put that down. And there's an NCT number for study 2, so we'll look those up in a second. Okay. Study 1 was conducted from 2008 to 2010. And study 2 was conducted roughly at the same time. I'd like to see the results. Here we go. So it looks like at week 12, so weird. Okay, let's make a... So it's pretty simple. There's 4 groups, right? Placebo, 15 mg iteperdine, 35 mg iteperdine, inteperdine, and donepezil. And there's a primary endpoint, which is ADAS-Cog, right? So ADAS-Cog, and there's 2 time points, week 12 and week 14. And ADAS-Cog is the kind of scale that the lower you go, the worse. So after 12 weeks, placebo went down 0.1, drug did not change, and inteperdine went down 0.2. And I'm sorry, ADAS-Cog is the higher it goes, the worse it is. So it looks like donepezil patients did the best. And week 24, placebo is declining, 15 mg getting better, interperdine's getting better, or getting worse, and donepezil is getting better, is the right way to interpret it. Let's look at the ADAS-Cog scale while we're at it. Eleven tasks measuring the disturbances of memory, language, praxis, attention, and other cognitive abilities, which are the core symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. This is the Slovak version validation. Let's maybe go somewhere else. "11 parts, takes 30 minutes to administer. Word recall task. Naming objects and fingers, following commands, shapes, letters, orientation, words, comprehension, etc." So I guess the greater the dysfunction, the greater the score. So the greater the dysfunction, the greater the score. All right, so placebo is going down, donepezil is going down, but intepridine is going up. That's a little strange, I'd say. It's quite strange, quite strange. Not good, right? Not good at all. Let's see how it did in study 2. There's study 2. We had placebo, 15 mg and 35 mg, and no donepezil active control. Everyone's on donepezil, right? So let's copy this, paste it, a little copy pasta. We got week 24 and week 48, no donepezil. Let's see what the data is here. Let's see, so placebo goes up 1.2 at week 24. And you can see in the other study, it only went up, it went down 0.3. So it's kind of funky because these should be the same, basically, right? Although in this study, the patients are on background donepezil. So it's a little strange. Let's see, on 15 mgs, it went up 0.5. And then on 35 mgs, it went down 0.4. So what we'll do, I guess, is subtract from placebo. So here, placebo is getting better, and we're getting worse. That's pretty bad. And here, donepezil is actually improving. So a negative score would be better, right? This is worse. It's a point worse than placebo. Let's look at 48 weeks. So you've got 3.4 full placebo. So these patients are getting really sick. At 15 mgs, you also have 3.4, so the same. But at 35 mgs, you have 1.8. So here, patients are doing much better. And here, they're not changing. So you got one study, basically, that shows 35 mgs intepridine is pretty good. And you got one study here that shows it's worse than placebo, which I think is a little strange, needless to say, because that's what they have to prove in the next study. So it's definitely not good that they saw that. A lot of variability, obviously, in clinical trials, but it is kind of strange. So then you have the second piece, which is the CDR sum of boxes, or CIBIC, is another way to do the clinical trial. So I'm going to copy paste again, kind of do the same analysis except doing this scale, which is the CIBIC plus. All right, so for the CIBIC plus, patients in placebo had a 3.9 at week 12. A 4 at 15 mgs, and a 3.9 at 35 mgs, which, as you may remember, is the dose that they're going to use in Mindset. So that's kind of the dose that we're going to always be looking at. And then 3.7 for donepezil, which is also called Aricept. Okay, so after 24 weeks, they had 4, 4.2, 3.9, and 3.7. And so I don't know how CDR sum of boxes works. So we should go, it's not CDR sum of boxes, this is the CIBIC plus. So let's look at what that is real quick. CIBIC plus scale. All right, so in the Civic Plus scale, it's a 7-point scale. 1 is improved, 7 is worse. So you want to go up on the scale. You don't want to go down, right? So higher score is better in essence. So placebo patients were 4. I'd like to know the change, what the baseline was. I doubt this is a change. This is a mean. So maybe they have baseline here somewhere. Doesn't look like it. All right, because it's hard to know if you don't know what the baseline is. This could be changed though. Either way, you can see donepezil seems to be outperforming intepridine, but really tough to tell, and the p-values are bad. So let's take some of these p-values down as well. So this was almost statistically significantly worse. It looks like this was nowhere, and this was also nowhere. So study 1 was like a total bomb for these guys. So let's look at CDR sum of boxes. And in CDR sum of boxes, we had minus 3.2 for placebo at week 24, and minus 5.5, so they're getting worse, for placebo at week 48. And here you have minus 1.9 for 15 mgs and minus 1.3, growing to minus 5 and minus 3.5. So definitely a slowdown. It looks like a slowdown in the progression. Now, if you're a cynic, you would say that, well, I think if you're an optimist, you'd say that the clinical trial, I don't know, that the clinical trial was, see, they cut off the p-values here, which is a little annoying. You would say that the clinical trial is this was the well-done clinical trial and this was the poorly done clinical trial, but a priori there's no reason to assign which one was done correctly and which one wasn't. So there's more to sort of think that through in a second, but let's get these p-values. So this p-value was statistically significant, 0.012, but that's not a great p-value. And this p-value was not statistically significant, and this one a little confused here. Hold on. I'm not looking at the right secondary endpoint. See, I grabbed this data, but I should be grabbing this data. So let's redo the CDR sum of boxes. So it's 0.9 for placebo, 0.8, 0.7, and here it's 1.6, 1.9, 1.5. And the p-values are 0.0711 and 0.462. So CDR sum of boxes did not go great. And let's look at how you analyze that. Let's see if they have that here, CDR. So this is higher is better. And it's sort of all over the place, as you can tell. A sample CDR table, let's see if... Now the co-primary endpoint now is ADCS-ADL. So keep that in mind. And there's no p-values for this, but you can see the drug doing a little bit better, maybe not, than placebo. And then here, you can definitely see the drug doing better than placebo. There's a repeated analysis change you can do. And that's a way to sort of measure the study over time. And then there's a mild to moderate stratification, which again, I'm not sure I believe in too well. Here's some visual representations. Change in ADAS-Cog. The darkest line is placebo, and the box is our dose. So you can see here, there was a trend against improvement. Here there was a trend for improvement. That was study 2. So I'm guessing column 1 is study 1, column 2 is study 2. These look about the same. Here, placebo and drug are about the same. It's really it's hard to tell the difference. Here, again, in study 2, the drug separates. This is a more well-run, maybe, study. If you believe that the drug works, this study was well-run, this study wasn't. But again, there's no a priori reason to believe that. So we got our first taste of what this drug is all about, and it looks like a pretty ugly situation in the sense that study 1, if you can find a reason to deny why study 1 is relevant, you could look at study 2 and get a little bit excited that you would get a little bit of activity. And again, I can't speak to my own experiences in this process. I want to look at this as objectively as I can from a sort of a neutral perspective, again, pretending like I've never heard of this drug before. So pretty weak efficacy, just 1 point or so better on ADAS-Cog, and the p-value of 0.01 is not too impressive. And then again, when you include study 1, you really get very worried about the results here. So if you were to, let's say, buy some puts in AXON, I can show you, you can short the stock, and if this study failed, the stock would likely go down, I think I mentioned about 75%. So let's take a look at, again, the stock price is $20.35. Let's go to Yahoo Finance since everyone has access to that. And type in AXON, type in options, and let's see, let's go to the October options. And if I bought puts, let's see, the 15 puts, I think the stock's going to go to 5. The 15 puts would be worth $10, so you double your money, if that makes sense. So this is like a lotto ticket, basically. You double your money if you're right. So that's sort of the way this would work. But if there was a real effect, and again, we've only seen 2 prior studies. We know that this study was 684 patients, and that this study is going to be, the mindset study will be double that, more than double that, 1,300 patients. So, but I think the best way to look at clinical trials is you look at past clinical trials. In the absence of that, you can look at some of the target data and preclinical data, but they've run experiments, and these experiments were not very good. This experiment was pretty good. Drugs don't work at low doses, and they'll work at higher doses. That's very common. So I believe that you can discard the 15 mg doses from both studies. Basically say that this is too low, right? If you take a speck of dust of Tylenol or Advil, you're not going to get a response. If you take more than a speck of dust, if you take enough specks of dust, say this many milligrams of specks of dust, you may get a response. Now, the problem is that we did not see that 35 milligrams was successful here in this study 1. We did see that it was successful in study 2. Now, in study 2, all patients were on donepezil, so the theory could be that maybe somehow combining these two would be beneficial, that there would be some sort of synergy, but I don't know. And the fact that the secondary endpoints didn't do well is a little concerning too. So there's, I think, more studies of this drug. I'm not sure though, but let's sort of take a break from here. This is sort of the first few hours of how I would look at it. And again, the signs are not good. I try to reserve judgment just because I don't want to have a preconceived notion as more information comes in that I want it to influence my final decision. But I would say off the bat that, you know, typically if you run an experiment and it fails and you run the experiment again, it fails again. And you can change things, obviously, to maybe pick the population where the drug does the best in. But I think that we have a lot to sort of think about here with the failure of this study 1 and the success of this study 2. But again, maybe the company can explain why we should discard these results and believe in these results. So we'll have more. This is a very, very preliminary analysis. We got way more to do here, but I hope you enjoyed this first session, and we'll be back with more later.